My phone buzzes. A DM from Lil Baby. He just hit me up with yo, exchanged contacts. He had heard about Aria.
Omar Alsafadi, the visionary behind Aria Music, revolutionizing the industry with a high-profile network.
My mother grabs my hands and she says, Omar, I'm so sorry, but for the rest of your life, you're gonna have to figure it out by yourself. You're gonna look around and your friends are gonna have that plan B and a father to help them figure out things, and you're not. And so that's when it clicked for me. There's no passion to be found playing small and settling for a life less than the one you're capable of. No matter the cards you're dealt in life, you still have the option of working hard.
How much money have you raised?
What we currently have raised is
All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Before we get into it, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, okay? We had a banger guest today. Who do we have, Ernesto?
Today, we sat down with our guy, Omar, the founder of Aria Music, to talk about how he turned personal tragedy into a driving force for innovation, all right? His goal is simple. He wants artists of any size to be able to monetize on their music. That's why he created Aria.
Guys, this episode was so inspiring. And if it teaches you one thing, it's gonna teach you that you cannot be a victim in life. With that being said, let's get into the episode. Omar, thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it. Excited to have you. Want to get right to it, okay? You're a founder with a true underdog story. We want to know and give the listeners and the viewers an idea of where this story begins.
Well, first of all, let me start by saying thank you so much for having me on the podcast. This is something I actually typically don't do. I think this is my third podcast, and the second one that I did never even got released. So, it's a really cool opportunity for me to kind of understand the climate that we're in. And one thing that I've noticed over the last few months is founder-led sales is really important to your customers and your product and your team. And so, as of recent, when I would talk to investors, my coworkers, customers of our product, when I would tell them about my upbringing and the story attached to me, immediately people started understanding what I was all about and what I was doing. And so I noticed that maybe in a weird way, this weird kind of cosmic way, that it's a little bit selfish of me not telling the story that, that's attached to me. Because maybe there's someone out there that's going through an extremely, extremely tough time. They're down bad. They feel like they're all alone. They're not happy and something's going wrong in their life, and they just need to hear that there's another person out there that's going through something similar. So where does it all start? It actually doesn't even start with me. It starts with my parents. Okay. So my parents are actually immigrants to the U.S. My father came here with less than $7 in his pocket. Wow. Worked a whole bunch of miscellaneous jobs. He was able actually to save up enough money to actually open up his first corner store. Now, unfortunately, that corner store was on the wrong side of town, where shortly after, an individual did come in and shot my father in the chest. So I actually never met my father. Wow. That wasn't the chaotic part. The chaotic part was he left us behind. We're a family of three. I have two siblings. One of my siblings is an individual with cerebral palsy. So you name all the government programs ever, we were on it. Social Security checks, disability, food stamps, all that good stuff. And so we had to figure this life out with no father kind of leading us and providing an income. So, I had to grow up at a young age and bring on some responsibilities. And I remember we would be moving all the time from one school district to the next school district because rent prices were getting crazy and we couldn't figure things out. And it got really tough for me, having to make new friends every time. And you would go in and, you think you would start to get comfortable, and then you would just get up and we have to go move to another, part of the town and whatnot. And I vividly remember actually, when the school bell would ring for lunch, I would actually sit back and wait for all the kids to go, because I was only one of the students that got their food comped because we didn't have enough money for school lunches. And so the lunch lady would actually be a different person every time, cashing someone out. And so I would sit there and I would wait, because one of the times I went there, I would get in line and, okay, it's $2.50 for lunch. And I'd be like, hey, I'm the guy that, I get it comped, please. And then they go, oh, what's your name? And very loud, and I'm looking behind me and I'm getting all embarrassed and stuff. So it was very difficult to, kind of get embarrassed at that age. You don't want people to know that you're comped and all that stuff. So that's where kind of this drive started to come forward, this entrepreneurial mindset. From there, I think as soon as I turned 13 or 14, I was starting to cut grass. I was really trying to figure out where I can make money to help support the family and grow up and whatnot. And the town I'm in, you had to be a certain age to actually work for, a real company. So as soon as I turned, I think 15 or 16, they give you this little card where like, hey, you could go, work wherever you want, but you have to work only 8 hours a week or whatever it is. And I got a job at a pharmacy. So I was a cashier at a pharmacy.
Okay.
And started really, understanding and started becoming a student of this like economic game that we live in this world and how to make money and what makes sense. And I was listening to the pharmacist, like, oh, you got to do this to be successful and so on and so forth. And, from there, I started going, I actually got to a full-time position. I got old enough to start doing full-time 40 hours a week. I did that all through college. So I put myself through college, graduated with a PhD. And when I say PhD, I mean poor, hungry, and driven.
I like that.
And, I started realizing that I kind of, the hustle didn't stop. You had to really keep going. And I started picking up more jobs where shortly after that, too, unfortunately, my mom was struck with ovarian cancer. So quick shout out to my mom. She is in remission. I'm very extremely proud of her because she actually grew her TikTok page to 1.1 million followers.
Wow. Come on.
Spreading awareness for ovarian cancer. So
incredible.
Shout out to her on that. Amazing way to change another huge negative point in your life into something successful. So, but, to kind of wrap that question up for you is, during this whole period of struggle and, attacks and just like feeling down, music was a really, really big, impactful place for me to find happiness, motivation, similarities, whatever it is to feel free. That was a really big part of my life there. And so, I started doing some research and I came across this article from Cambridge University where they did a study where they said 71% of music listeners actually listen to artists that relate to their past. And that's kind of the birth of where my startup came from and where we got to. So
okay, before we get into that, yeah. I want to kick it back a little bit because I'm very intrigued and I think a lot of people would honestly want to understand this. Like, how old were you when you lost your dad?
So I was about 2 years old. So unfortunately, I have zero memories of him. Okay. But my mother tells me, look in the mirror.
Tons of stuff.
Nice. Look in the mirror and you'll find your father. So.
At what age did you start to understand the whole situation? And you know what I mean? That you didn't have a dad because 2 years old, like you said, I don't think you really realized much, right? So what age did you start to realize like, whoa, things are a little bit different for me than they are for other people? Yeah. And was it certain conversations your mom would have with you, your siblings would have with you, or walk us through that? Because I think it's losing a parent is probably, I can imagine, I'm lucky enough to not be in that situation, but that's tough. And I don't know what I would do. So I want other people to understand how tough that really is, No,
I appreciate that question. So I remember it very vividly. Okay. The time that it hit me. Okay. So my father's death didn't bother me at all. I used to get a little attention here and there. People understood, blah, blah, blah. But it didn't bother me until graduation day. I remember we were late for graduation day. I had to put my suit on. I was about to walk the stage. And it came time to put the tie on. And my sister's over here on YouTube trying to figure it out. And she's like, oh, this guy, there was a guy like said fatherless, like it was like a fatherless channel where he was like the YouTube dad or whatever. And he was doing that. My mom was here on my right side and she was trying to help me. And at that very moment, my mother grabs my hands and she says, Omar, I'm so sorry. But for the rest of your life, you're going to have to figure it out by yourself. Wow. You're going to look around and all your peers and your friends are going to have that plan B and that second option and a father to help them figure out things and fall back on and whatnot. And you're not. And that's the story you have to play. And so you have two options. You could either play the victim card for the rest of your life and say, life didn't treat me well, and, just give up on everything and not be motivated, and it wasn't fair, and blame it on other things. Or you stand up on your 2 feet and you figure it out. And so that's when it clicked for me. That's when I was like, okay, well, I really have a different life than 90% of the people around me. And how am I going to deal with that information and that set of, those cards that were dealt with me? And so that's really when I knew, like, okay, I got to figure things out.
And a part of figuring things out, was that also sort of looking around and saying, oh, like, I got to take care of my family now, not just like myself, and I don't have a plan B, but now it becomes like, whoa, okay, I have these women around me, very strong women.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's a very tough thing. Like, I can imagine how tough it is for you to have to hear that from your mom, but also imagine her having to say that, like, both ways. That's, I can never imagine, but do you think that's sort of the spark as well of like, okay,
100%.
like, it's time to get going now?
100%. And, I don't think I've always knew that I wanted to be in this kind of founder mode and like have my own company, but I always feel like it was something guiding me in that way. And I think it's because of that information. And I just knew that I had this greater responsibility. I had to, the very least is pay for my own phone bill. You know what I mean? So like, okay, let me help with that, because then the Social Security check could cover the rent and do this. And so that we don't have to put that money towards, our phone bill. And so 100%, I couldn't agree anymore. It's like, okay, I got to step up to the plate. I think my father would be proud of me to know that things are taken care of, and his family that he's trying to, continue on is, doing well.
Yeah.
So.
Someone say, okay, so obviously I think from that point you were kind of mentioning, you start doing all the entrepreneurial things, you start cutting grass, you get the job, you learn, hey, like, oh my God, I have to exchange my time for money, right? And those, I feel like, as entrepreneurs ourselves, like, everyone goes through those steps. You do a little bit of a hustle, then, the world tells you get a job and you don't want to, but you kind of learn that, like, oh, okay, I have a boss. I want to be that guy. I don't want to be this guy, right? And all of those steps. But when does Aria Music come to life?
Wow. Okay. So earlier in this conversation, I mentioned that I used to work at a pharmacy.
Yeah.
And where I started to recognize, well, I didn't recognize it at the time, but later on, I recognized I had this like weird hustle mentality. So I would get like a 20% discount for working at this pharmacy. And then every Friday they would have these like crazy discounts. And so I would go into the candy aisle and I would actually just buy up all the big candy bags. And this was actually my like first dip into, like, if you really think about it, influencer marketing.
Okay.
I would take those bags of candy, I would go to school, and I'd find like the popular kids, the sports guys and everything, and I actually would just go give them free candy. I'd be like, hey, yo, take all this candy, blah, blah. And I would make sure it was in the red hall. We had like we had different colored halls, and that's how you like organize things. And it was in the red hall, and I would just make sure everyone was looking. And so then the next kid would be like, oh, let me get a Kit Kat, let me get this, or whatever. And I'd be like, oh yeah, 50 cents. Throw me 50 cents and do that. And so at the time, I just thought I was like just doing cool things.
Yeah.
But it was really an entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah.
And so to get back to how does Aria come about, it was 2018. And there was a lot of noise about how artists weren't getting paid fairly. Independent artists were kind of on the rise. And J. Cole actually released his album, KOD. And on that album, there's a song called Brackets. And halfway through the song, it's something along the lines of like, it's 2018, why can't I pick where my taxes go? Like, there should be an app that says I can know and I could go pick this stuff. And I was like, yo, that's kind of a good idea. There's something there, you know what I mean? And so I started connecting the dots. I started noticing that there was this like uprise of indie artists and people want to get, cut their fair share. And so this hypothesis kind of grew in my mind, which was like, well, if users, where every single cent in the music industry comes from the listener, can say where their money goes within the application, will we see a surge of emerging independent artists and upcoming artists. And so I was like, okay, well, before I go spend the next 6 years of my life going after this, I really have to like make sure there's product market fit. And so I actually started any venue. This is crazy. Any venue that would pass through my hometown, I was like breaking in, jumping over the fences. I was bribing security guards. I was figuring out how I could go and meet with the main act. And so I did that about 10 to 15 times.
Okay.
And I would go up to them like, hey, give me 5 seconds, please. I need 5 seconds of your time. Would you see an increase in money if you did this? Do you make money off your music right now? Are you seeing it more with concerts? Are you, like, is this why you're on tour? Is because you don't make money off your music? Like, what is the reasons that you would like to see changed within the music industry? And all of them gave me the same answer. It was like, yeah, we need more direct engagement with our fans. We don't have that digitally right now. What could we do? How could we improve that? So on and so forth. And that literally was the day of the birth of Aria. That's when I was like, okay, let me try and figure out this whole system. How do we get this to like be a real-time application where artists could directly monetize their fan and give control back to the users?
Yeah.
So in terms of like traditional revenue sharing platforms,
Yeah.
what would it be, like Spotify,
Yeah.
SoundCloud? So you're looking at them and you're saying, okay, they're deciding where the money's going.
Correct.
So you decide, okay, well, if I decide to put money into an app, I can put it directly to that artist.
Correct.
That's the main
That's the
difference.
gist of it. Yeah, that's the
and
gist
no
of
one has been doing that.
So there's obviously, I think there's some competitors in the space. A lot of them are very crypto heavy.
Okay.
Which I think unfortunately kind of like puts you in a certain category
Yeah.
where then people are very uncomfortable
People
with
like
it.
feel like it's
yeah,
sketchy.
it's like what's going on there.
Okay.
And then there's like things that are more content creator things, like Patreon and other platforms like that, where you kind of have that mentality. But this specific niche of indie artists being able to tap into their fan base, because what we've realized with our research is, so the way that it works right now is if you get X amount of streams on a regular DSP platform, you get paid out.
Okay.
Okay, but the problem is a lot of these indie artists that have very loyal fan base, they can't hit 1 million streams.
And there's a minimum, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a minimum. So you can't get to a point where you can actually make money off of it. But if you go to their local neighborhood or town, they're selling out bars. They're very well known. They go to all the town events and they're performing on stage and they make a couple $1,000 here and there. And so it's like, okay, well, they have a loyal fan base, but they can't hit the streams. So then it opts them out of making money. It's like kind of not fair.
Yeah.
And so what we say is, okay, you pay $10 a month on our platform, 25% of it, pick whoever you want it to go to. Still listen to all the music in the world that you want. And you could say, okay, I want it to go to artist X, Y, and Z. I want it to go here. Next month you could change it, so on and so forth.
Okay.
So it gives you an authentic and transparent representation of what an artist is worth. So if you're able to bring 100,000 people to give you 25% of a subscription, you're worth that. That's what it should be. But if you're not, maybe it's just a harsh reality of like, hey, maybe this is not. Maybe I should go into accounting or something. You know what I mean? Like this is.
But for me, it's like it's because we come up with ideas all the time and concepts for businesses, right? And the first thing I look at is the competitors out there and how big they are, right? So did you ever think like, damn, this is going to be a daunting task to go after these big boys?
Like you're talking the biggest.
Yeah, you're talking about guys that, companies that have established themselves over a decade, right? And I'm not saying that you can't do it because I think you can.
Thank you.
And I think you're doing it right now.
Thank you.
But because I think a lot of people would look at that and say, well, guys, we're really going to go after SoundCloud. We're really going to go after Spotify, right? So how did you kind of accept the fact that, hey, listen, I'm going to do this. I'm going up against big guys here.
So great question. I mean, literally every single investor I've ever talked to asked me that question. And so you have to be prepared.
Yeah.
So let me put it this way. Spotify and SoundCloud and Apple Music and all the DSPs out there, they're actually great models. They consolidated all the music in the world and they put it right in the palm of your hand and you can listen to anything and the consumer is very happy, you pay for it, you don't have to worry about anything. It's a great model. What we're doing is investors tend to think that we're working against them, but we're working in tandem with them as an additional option for users. Now, the system as it is today does not benefit independent artists. It kind of skews to one end. If you're signed and you have a really good atmosphere and a good following, the system works perfectly. You don't want to be on any other platform besides Spotify because you're getting the stream numbers that correlate to the numbers that you want to get paid. And so that's great for them, but it's leaving, I think, almost 9 million artists that are on Spotify not paid. And so there's an opportunity that we could take advantage of there, and we want to exploit that. We want to give that opportunity.
So talk about the niche that you're after then. You mentioned indie.
Yep.
Is that where it's going to end, or is that where it's going to start?
No, that's where it's going to start.
Okay.
So we are 100% focused on independent, upcoming artists that have kind of anywhere between, 5,000 followers and fans all the way to 500,000, a million, depending on, if you're signed or not. And so giving that opportunity to them to actually gain money into their account where they could withdraw and use it on the spot is where the value is going to be. And because what does that do? That gives them money for studio time. That gives them money to get a feature. That gives them money to get a tour bus, a laptop, whatever they need to live. I mean, arguably, being an independent artist and going like the artist route is more difficult than having a 9-to-5. You know what I mean? You don't get 401ks, you don't get health insurance, you don't get all this other stuff. So it's like, what is it that that they could do for themselves to make enough money so that they could go buy those things to be comfortable and live a life, And so that's kind of the concept.
Okay, so I can see the conversation being pretty easy when you're talking to smaller artists, right? Because it's not like they have many options like you just said. Do you have a game plan when it comes to getting bigger artists to come on the platform?
We do. So what we have to do is, so back to, when I was breaking into these concerts and whatnot. I've been fortunate to actually build up a healthy relationship. Now, I haven't worked with these individuals just yet, but they see the passion, they understand the story, and it's really up to me to prove myself at this point. And so, I've had some really, really crazy big meetings that I couldn't even believe that I was a part of, because I'm just this random dude from a small town who's trying to do something, and for some reason these dominoes keep falling for me. So I've built a good network there where I think when I'm able to prove the point, I have enough convincing power to have them at least try it.
Yeah.
But the goal for us is this, and we have actually a very cool commercial idea. I can't tell you this one, but when it comes out, I'll definitely forward it to you guys. Where what we want to do is we want to build a big enough community for indie artists that are making a substantial living that the big dogs say like, oh, well, maybe I could do this. You know what I mean? Maybe there's an opportunity for me to jump in and let me see how it works. True. I mean, the system's working for me, I'm fine, whatever, but it doesn't hurt to make a little bit of extra money. Of
course.
So that's the goal. Maybe we could build a big enough system that someone wants to kind of, these bigger artists want to jump in and dabble in there a little bit.
So let me ask you a question about the app. If I come on the app, I'm only going to be able to see the artists that have signed on.
Correct.
Okay. Correct. So it's not like I can go on there and listen to Drake music, let's say. At the moment. I mean, obviously, all of that really comes down to a money play. If we raise enough money, we could go buy the contracts and the licensing agreements to have that content. But I don't think that's not going to win for us. Yeah.
Our initiative is to help these indie artists. And so, long term, 4 or 5 years down the line, of course, we want to appeal to the masses, and a majority of the masses love Drake. They love, whatever artist that's, relevant.
Yeah.
And so we want to be able to provide that. But we think for the short term, we're just heavily focused on the underdogs. Yeah. Let's get them on the platform. Let's get their music, get their fans interacting and, a part of the system.
Okay. So go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna say, it seems like a little bit of a similar play to the old SoundCloud.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I remember the old SoundCloud was like a place. Now it's, they're massive, right? But I feel like they took a sort of similar path. Correct me if I'm wrong. Where it was like, let's get the artists who are. I actually think it was more like house music focused.
Even rap too. A lot of rap.
Yeah, it was like these guys would drop stuff that necessarily you wouldn't see on the big platforms, and it was almost like a. And I actually like this a lot because I feel like a lot of the things we've done, we've always been the underdogs, and there's a kind of a beauty in that.
Yeah.
But there's always this like, they SoundCloud took that route. I feel like at the beginning. So is that kind of similar? Like, are you looking at it similarly as they did?
Exactly that. I would if we had to compare ourselves to another platform more specifically, it would be SoundCloud.
Okay.
We want artists to come up there. They could upload their music. They could put it behind paywalls. They could do what they want to do with it. And then, take that opportunity, invite their fans to it, kind of engage that way. So yeah, 100%. We're a little bit more of like the old days of SoundCloud to start, because I think first of all, as a company, we want to minimize as much overhead as possible.
Of course.
And so it's easier for us to not go pay those licensing fees and convince artists to want to put their music on here because they can inherently make more money. And so yeah, I agree with you on that.
Cool.
So let's talk about how you started building it.
Yeah.
Right? Because obviously this is something big that you're building, right? So what are the first kind of steps that you're making? What kind of teammates are you looking for? Are you spending a lot of money to build this thing? Talk about it a bit, because I know we kind of passed that point, but
no, of course, no, thank you. So, man, it's tough. Okay, the amount of like just being lost and trying to figure out. Like again, I never had until recently. I never was reaching out to mentors or like other people who have gone through this, which is what I should have done really, really early on. I remember. So I'm gonna take you back a little bit. I remember when after that kind of eureka moment, like, oh, I'm onto something, and I got the product market fit and market validation. I went and made a pitch deck. My first pitch deck, I like cringe like even thinking about it. It was 52 pages long.
Wow. No one's reading that, bro.
There was spelling errors that you couldn't even believe, graphs that didn't even make any sense.
Yeah.
Like you said, no one even read it. I remember one time I was sitting in a Panera somewhere, and an investor came and I had all the papers out. I'm like, listen, this is what we're gonna do. And the thing is, it was 2018 at the time, and no one was just understanding what the hell I was trying to get. Like that, oh, why? It doesn't make any sense. Why would I want to do that? Why would I want to do that? Only until recently people are like, whoa, this makes perfect sense, because you're seeing the tides change right now. So from there, one of the investors that we were pitching at the time was like, well, you need a technical founder, because I'm not technical. And I have built applications in the past. I built a game called Snail Runner a long time ago, but that was completely like irrelevant. It was a mobile gaming application, nothing to do with music. And so I had to find someone who was technical. And so we started going to dev shops. We were like, okay, let's go to a dev shop. Maybe they could help us, which is another big like challenge in itself, because a lot of them don't have the skill set you think. They're outsourcing, so on and so forth. So it gets cloudy there. And so you do lose a lot of money on those because they don't get the product that you want. So actually, our first technical founder that we got was just by luck. So a lot of this in the team I have today, and it's something very important for us when we hire someone and bring someone on board, is what is their background, okay? And so we ask a few questions, and so actually, let me jump back a little bit there. The luck was we actually were just on a plane, and some guy was coding next to us, and we were like,
come on.
Hey, what are you coding there? He's like, oh, I'm building my own app. And I was like, oh, this is sick. What is it? You did this? Are you a senior dev? Like, you could do this all by yourself?
You know what
like,
to ask him. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he was like, yeah. And then we kind of showed him the mock-ups that we had. And we caught his attention, and then we had some meetings, and then we brought him on board. And so he put us in the right direction. And then we started interviewing people. We need to grow the team in order to show that we have some merit behind us. And, we started interviewing people. And so this is where it gets to like, you really got to understand that they see the long-term vision in what you're doing. Because if money and equity doesn't motivate you, like I don't know what will. So we don't want that a part of the team.
Yeah.
And so we would ask them, okay, to a certain amount, whatever you feel comfortable sharing with us, what's kind of your upbringing? And if it's similar to what I went through and other people went through, that was good flags for us. We knew that there was like kind of this underdog mentality that we wanted to keep. And then one of the biggest things that we always asked was, is there other ways to do this? And if the answer was like, no, you have to do it this way, this is the only way that you could do it, we didn't hire them. Because we wanted people that were like, well, no, you could do it this way. We wanted people to challenge us, because one of the biggest driving factors for Aria in our company is we know when we're not the smartest people in the room. And so we want to go bring the talent that's going to say, hey, you guys are like stupid. What are you guys doing? Like, don't do this. This is going to make us, bad company. Or no, we should actually build in this way, because in the future we're going to grow to 100 million users or whatever it is. And that's going to, make us slower or whatever it is. And so we wanted people to come onto the team to challenge us. And so that's kind of the way that we started bringing people onto the platform. And it's expensive, for sure.
So you're looking for underdogs with an open mind.
Exactly.
Pretty much, right?
Yeah, that's a good
okay, so from there you're building out the team, and you did that with no funding.
No funding. So a lot of it, Sam Altman actually did a podcast recently. He's like, the hardest thing you're gonna ever do is find talent to get onto the board. And that was actually, in a weird way, one of the easiest things for us to do, because previous to raising money, I had built up a very strong story. I had the celebrities kind of around. People understood that I was doing something crazy. And there was this kind of really, really good like feeling around the company. And so when I would introduce the product and my underdog story and who was involved and whatnot, people were like, man, I don't want to lose a chance in this. Maybe this is something that goes big. Let me be a part of it. And so we got really, really lucky then. And then the money just helped. The money came in after that. And then we were like, okay, now we could pay you guys. We could do this and make it a little bit more fruitful for everyone.
So you were bringing team members on with no money at all.
No money.
Just equity at that point.
Just selling the vision.
You're selling the vision, a little bit of equity. Like, hey, if you get on board, we could go raise money. This is what could happen. And that worked. And people really believed in it.
Let's talk about that point, selling the vision, because I feel like, and we've come across this many times where it's like, we have some people, we want them to believe in our vision.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's hard because it's in your head sometimes and you're like, how am I going to relay this to someone?
Right.
So how did you, and I know you have a very underdog story, so that in itself is very inspiring, but what did you learn about selling your vision to the people around you and making them buy in?
That's a really good question. So it came down to, really tapping into my underdog story and kind of what I was going through and why I thought this was going to be something that's a game changer. And so I had to, in a weird way, start taking the information that individual was telling me and spitting it back at them and saying, almost having them think it's their idea. You know what I mean? So I started doing that and it started working and people understood, like, they would say, oh, have you ever thought of building this feature? I was like, oh yeah, that's in our roadmap. Like, that's really cool that you thought about that. What else did you have about that idea? And so then they started getting involved and they were like, okay, I actually understand this. This makes a lot of sense. Like, I should be a part of this company. Yeah. And so that's how it worked. And, I kept doing that. We have a small team. I don't want to expand quickly. I just want to have good quality individuals and then slowly scale up. And so I found the right 4 or 5 people and then we kind of just kept it at that point, and hopefully in the soon future we'll get more.
Giving
people.
those 4 or 5 people is like that freedom requires trust though.
Yeah.
So how did you trust people that early on with your baby?
You gotta take a risk,
right?
At that point, it's like, you just don't know. You know what I mean?
Answer.
It's either I'm gonna be super protective. I remember one investor was like, dude, I'm not even gonna take a meeting with you if you're making me sign an NDA. I see 400 pitches a week. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna sign an NDA for each one. That means I couldn't talk about anything in life anymore. So, at that point, you just like, you have to believe in yourself. I mean, at the end of the day, if you go into any grocery store and you look down the bread aisle, there's like 500 different types of bread, and they're all making millions of dollars. It's like, okay, well, they're nothing special. They're all pretty much the same exact product. Some people do this, some things do that. Okay. And so it's like, am I gonna be afraid of, the environment that I'm getting into, there's already like 10, 15 different types of streaming platforms, So it's really about the brand. It's really about who you're bringing in, and just having this trust, like, hey, this guy seems like a good, and I've got burnt. Yeah. I've got people who come on the team.
You kind of need to get burnt, bro, to learn.
You just learn, yeah. And then like, if you want to get technical, there's legal stuff and paperwork you could have them sign that makes you sleep a little bit better at night. But at the end of the day, it's like, it just comes with the territory. You just have to be able to be harsh and be trustworthy at the same time.
Yeah.
So.
And you mentioned even the celebrity affiliations earlier on. I'm guessing that added a lot of legitimacy to what you were doing. Yeah. Do you want to talk about that a bit? Maybe which celebrities and how that came to be?
Yeah, actually, there's I got a couple cool stories on this one. So
we're ready.
So early days of Aria, I was actually very close to just shutting it down. I wasn't getting investment. I had a team, but it's like the motivation started getting low because we've already been at this for 4 months. And we really haven't built the product. We're trying just to get any type of money to keep things motivated. And I remember this very vividly. I was laying in bed and I was like, okay, Omar, you gotta get up. You gotta type the email to close out the company. We're gonna dissolve it. We did a good try. We'll try and figure out something else in a couple months or whatever. So I take my phone. I put it, for some reason, I remember I took it off Do Not Disturb. I don't know why. I usually don't do that. And I put it right next to my laptop. And I started typing the email. Hey, y'all, it's with big regret that, we've given this our full effort. We can't do it. This this is going to be really, really tough for us to try and spark it up. People are not understanding because the timing wasn't right. People just didn't understand. And I was reaching out to everyone. One of my tactics for like celebrity outreach was I would DM them, they would never answer. And then I would go to their following, like who are they following? And I would go and just pick anyone that didn't have a blue check mark. And I would just like, hey, I've been actively trying to get in touch with this celebrity. I have this thing going on. Is there any chance that you could do it? And like maybe I think it was like 5 to 9% of them would actually get back to me. Mm-hmm. They would send me an email. They're like, oh, send me an email. I'll forward it along to you and blah, blah, blah. And so that kind of worked, and I started building, and I just started reaching out to everyone. And so there was kind of like a small late lag of what Aria was about. And so as I was typing this email up, my phone buzzes. And I'm like, who's this blue check mark that just messaged me? And I was like, I'm looking at it. I'm like, what am I looking at right now? And it was actually a DM from Lil Baby. And I had never reached out to him before. He just hit me up with yo, and we had a couple conversations back and forth, exchanged contacts, and he had heard about Aria through the grapevines. And I was like, this is like 100% a sign. Like I just delete that email right now.
100%.
You know what I mean? So I deleted that email right away, and you know, I was like, okay, now let me start using this as leverage. So that goes into play. You know, you get that type of information, someone that's not even in this realm was like, yo, that's sick. I love Lil Baby, like blah, 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 and all this stuff. And it's just like, now the story kind of builds a little bit of merit. Like, oh, you're doing something that I can never do. Let me be a part of this, so on and so forth. So there's just these little dominoes that just kept falling in my favor and building kind of that network. I mean, the next like big kind of opportunity that happened for me was, again, through the grapevines, I was able to connect with Akon, huge mentor of mine. I've been listening to every single one of his songs. I remember back in those cafeteria days, Lonely.
Yeah, big tune though.
I mean, so I was just listening to those, and you know, we started building up a little bit of rapport. We went out to dinner, and one of the biggest things he says, like, yo, if I become a part of this, I'm not really investing in the product, I'm investing in your story. And so that was just another big thing, like, okay, I have something special here. Am I really just gonna not try and figure this out? And so those are kind of like, those two kind of like celebrity stories.
And you know, for anyone out there, because you know, I think every business right now is trying to get celebrity affiliation and connect with one or network with one. Like, how did you use the first one as leverage to continue building that legitimacy and get to the next one? Because I think that's where, you know, a lot of people will mess up. They're like, oh, I just got this DM, and it's like, but how do you use that now? And grow from there?
That's a good question. First of all, you got to have something to offer. Mm-hmm. Okay, so all these people, all these celebrities, all these, you know, big timers they got their friends. They don't need no new friends. Who am I to be their friend and hanging out? I mean, yeah, maybe in the future we'll have a business relationship and we'll celebrate if we hit 1 million like downloads because of them or something like that. But at the end of the day, they have their friends, and so you have to have something to offer, and you have to make sure that you could make an ROI on it. So you don't want to just go for the hype. These guys see right through you. If you don't have the real factor or you know, something cool, and you give off this like, hey, I'm just here because the excitement around the name and whatnot, they'll disappear very quickly. Yeah, and it's understandable. I mean, you know, it's what do they want? Something that's not going to make them money or benefit their life. It's like, who are you?
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. And so you got to have something to offer. You got to make sure that, you know, when you speak to investors about it, that, hey, this is, you got to be transparent about it too. You can't be like, okay, this guy, like, for example, Akon's not an investor in us. He wants to be a part of it. There's conversation maybe that this potentially could happen. But I leverage that information. Hey, you know, like, we have preliminary conversations right now with one of our major celebrity that could potentially endorse us. We could, you know, figure out a paid aspect. It could be an equity aspect of it. It could be, you know, I don't know, just a face of the, you know, a commercial or something like that. But you have to have kind of the different outlets. But at the end of the day, you have to have something to offer. You're good. You got to have something to offer, and you have to be able to convert it into something that makes money. Okay,
so celebrity affiliations happening. You deleted that email draft.
Yeah.
And now you're motivated yet again.
Right.
You got a fire under your ass yet again.
Yep.
My question is, when it comes to the marketing of Aria, what's the plan to market the app? Because I know that there's the artist side, but then there's also the user side. Are you just hoping that the artist brings the users, or is there a plan to market to users as well?
So that's a question that we're always trying to figure out. Like, we don't have a concrete answer. It's kind of just
Probably changes all the
changes
time.
every day. But the route that we think that's most beneficial for us at the moment is this invite-only process.
Okay.
So right now, in order to get into the application, you have to have a code. The way that we kind of structure it is, obviously we let our friends in to get feedback and whatnot. We want to fail fast in the sense of like, okay, these features are working, these are not working.
Okay.
What do we need to change? All that good stuff. But the concept that we have kind of drafted in our mind is, how do we get an artist on? Let's have them set up their profile, and then they upload their music and get some good like kind of image on there, and it looks established. Because when they invite their fans, we want them to have next steps. Okay, like we don't want them to come to an empty platform. So that's the whole reason behind the invite-only process. If we had it public, you get all these millions of downloads, and then it's just like
nothing
mostly
there.
listeners, and there's like one song. It's
Yeah.
like, this is a terrible experience. You
Okay.
know? So how do we populate it? We bring the artist in. The artist fills out their profile. They go to their super fans or their fan base or whatever it is and bring them on. And so that gives us an opportunity for them to have next steps, and then we can see some money generating through the platform. And that's kind of what we have right now. We definitely want to change it up. We have commercial ideas and concepts that's very relevant to kind of the noise that's going on in the industry right now. But we're always open to new ideas. We're bringing in consultants to see like if there's something that's better out there. And a lot of it's just like, I've been really playing this like feeling kind of mentality where like something feels right about this, let's give it a try. And they tend to usually work for us. But you can't just go off feelings. You got to ask questions.
Of course.
So we ask the questions. If the questions kind of work in our favor, let's go from there. So right now we're really just doing that process and then sponsoring those like underground events.
Cool.
Okay.
Like those like couple indie artists are coming up to perform. We get them signed on, all that good stuff. So that's kind of the route that we're going right now.
Okay, cool. And then when it comes to like, I guess the innovation of Aria, and we mentioned crypto as well. Is that ever a plan to get crypto or the blockchain involved at all?
Good question. I mean, we know that crypto is here to stay, and it has a merit to it, and there's a lot of beneficial things from it. Is it what we're leading with? No. But have we built the system so that we can pivot if we need to? Yes.
Cool.
So we're not going at this as a crypto tactic. We want to make this as user-friendly as possible, as appealing to the audience as possible. We don't want them to have to go into the platform and change their money for something else, and then they have to go in to pay, let's just make it very easy.
Yep.
And then we'll slowly integrate it as we grow, as that industry grows too into this area.
And then in terms of the UX, right, the user experience, what are things that you guys are going to be doing different than these traditional guys? And maybe some things that you're going to keep that you're like, you know what, that was a good idea. That explore page was cool.
Yeah.
This was cool. Talk about that a little bit.
Great question too. So right now we're actually we're trying to keep it actually as similar as possible to what's already out there because people are used to it. So the way you got to see this industry is it's like a car. When you go buy a car, you're going to buy a car that doesn't have windshield wipers, it doesn't have tires, but it has an engine. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not going to buy that, So you have to have certain standards, which is what we're getting to. So you got to be able to make playlists. You got to be able to save songs. You have to have the kind of this like easy environment. You jump into any car, you know what to do inherently, right? You jump in, this is where the key goes, push the start, the brake and pedals. You just know.
Yes.
So we have to get to that level. So we do mimic a lot of the platforms that are currently out there, very similar vibe, because we want people to get familiar with the platform. Where we get different is what we allow the users to do, which is, again, direct the money. They get to control it. So there's a little bit of like a different environment there that's cool. It's like, whoa. Like there's a lot of like power I have in my hand right now, and we want to amplify that feeling for the user. And so the reasoning behind that is all of 2024, I'm not sure if you guys agree or not on this, but there's a lot of been like, we want control back.
Yeah.
Whether it's political, whether it's, in the music industry, like the people are kind of like,
We've lost it.
you know what I
Education,
mean?
want it
Yeah.
back.
everywhere.
Yeah,
Yep,
everyone wants to have their voice heard. And what better way to do that
fair.
than in this economy, or in this market, excuse me. And so we want to amplify that. We want to encourage that. So there, the UI UX is getting a little bit cool and clever and different, so we can build excitement. But other than that, We want them to jump into this car like it was any other car and get the feel of it, and then slowly introduce these nice, cool features.
Cool. And in terms of, you're in the testing phase right now, you're getting feedback.
Yep.
How important has that been for you guys?
yeah.
And can you talk about some of the feedback you've been getting or some of the changes that you've already made?
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, from day one of the app, it's already looks completely different. Like you wouldn't, if you saw the first version of it, you wouldn't even like know this was the same app at that point.
Yeah.
But fail fast. It's so important. A lot of these founders are like, I want to have the perfect app. Like I got to really make sure this is good and like the best experience possible. But you're building in your own echo chamber.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's just like, you know,
It's what you think.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, this is going to be great.
Yeah.
But then you got to get user feedback as fast as possible. So you got to let those nerves go away. You're always going to change. You're always going to get better. Release it to a group of small, 5, 10, 15 people. Get them on and have them start testing and breaking the app. Fail fast. It's so important because then you know what's wrong and what people like and don't like. And then the market dictates your product.
Yeah.
It's like, this is what they want. Okay, we'll do it. I mean, our business model kind of changed like 3 times since we started too, because fans were like, oh, wait, we actually like this more. We like this more. We like this more. And so we would pivot and change and change. So super, super important to get user feedback, specifically the artists that you want onto the platform, the audience, kind of a little bit of a secondhand thing because the platform is built to have artists bring their fans to it. So it's like, okay, artists, what do you like? This is what we want. Let's change it. Let's make it better. And then we still get feedback from fans, but it's not as relevant right now until we get bigger.
True. And this is another question I have is like, do you plan to just stay in the music realm? Because I feel like this is also something where, if you came to us, for example, with a podcast and you're like, hey, you want your fans to directly be able to monetize you guys, or are you guys going to stay on YouTube where YouTube decides how much money you're going to make?
So great question. So podcasts and music, I like to almost put them in the same category. So we will be opening up to podcasts eventually. But right now, just super, super focused on
one thing at a time.
It's a massive market on
Yeah, one thing at a time. Yeah.
Is the plan to exit eventually? Is that what you're looking at? Or is that even a thought right now?
So right now, we're really just focusing, like we can't even exit if we don't have a product or we don't have traction. You know what I mean? So let's build this thing as big as we possibly can.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'd be an idiot to not entertain conversations around that. And so I'm definitely open to the conversation and just listening out. But as a founder right now that's doing something exciting that could potentially change the world in a weird way, like the way so when I talk to investors and they bring up the Spotify question or the Apple Music question or whatever, I'll tell them like, dude, listen, if Apple Music or Spotify does this tomorrow, like you've already 100x your money. If I had to make the biggest company in the world in music change their business model because of me, I've done something right. Of
Correct.
Some sort.
Yeah,
you know
it's
what
true.
I mean?
It's very true.
So that gets them kind of sometimes. I mean, I got you. Like
it is.
Well, maybe I should invest. So let's see what happens. So it's just important right now to like focus on getting the company bigger and building an audience and making sure that this actually works.
No, I asked because, obviously you've been sitting with a lot of investors as well. And there are some founders that will say like from day one, hey, this is an exit plan. We're building for an exit, right? That's why I was interested to know, right?
Of course, yeah.
But let's go into actually raising money.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a very interesting topic.
It's a popular topic.
It's a very popular topic.
Everyone wants to raise money,
Everyone wants to know what it's like. Everyone wants to understand it. We kind of went through it a little bit. So I guess let's start with how much money have you raised? And was it via multiple people? Was it one fat check? And then we'll kind of go into like what that took to get that.
Okay, so we're currently in a funding round. So we're raising a large amount. What we currently have raised is $250,000, all from family and friends.
Nice.
So I think we have it split against, I think we're about 9 people.
Okay.
So basically going to our family and friends, showing them all the, the concept, what we're doing, the story behind me attached to it really plays into it as well. And obviously those individuals are being heavily compensated equity-wise.
Of course.
Because they're taking a massive risk. Okay?
Yeah.
And it all comes different size checks. One person did 50, another person did 5, another person did 1,000. You just do what you need to do to get to that point, But the biggest thing you have to do is when you get those checks, those individuals are not going to be the ones that are emailing you and texting you every day, what's going on with my money. They've kind of understood that they're losing it. You know what I mean? They've kind of got to a point where they're like, okay, this money
They know
I'm
it's a
never gonna
gamble.
see
They know it's a
again. You know
gamble.
what I mean?
Yeah.
But they believe in it.
course.
And that's why they're getting compensated equity very well, because if it does go, they're worth it because they believed in me when no one else did.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay. So, you have to just make sure that you give them updates. And you say, hey, this is what's going on. We have this many users. Don't be afraid to tap into their network too. They've invested probably in things before if they're willing to do this one. And see if there's any way that they could help promote your application or business or whatever it is to get to that next stage. So as of right now, that's where we're at. We raised $250,000. We have about 30,000 people who've waitlisted for our product. And we only have about, I think it's like 600 people on the app right now as we continue to grow and build and get bigger.
Okay. And you've obviously had conversations with like outside investors that aren't family and friends. I want to talk about that a little bit because we sort of had an experience with that as well. We did a little bit different where we sort of built another business with just our own money and built it to a very stable business, and then we sort of used that to sort of launch our next thing. So we never. It's funny. It was something we were always proud of. We're like, oh, we never raised money, and But then you kind of realize at one point where, depending on I think the type of business. Sometimes you need cash. You need cash to get it done, right? Especially if you're chasing big boys, right? And you're chasing really big dreams and visions. So we had a certain experience with speaking to outside investors and making them believe in things the way that we did. And I think a big piece of that is the communication aspect. How can you communicate your goals? And listen, I think sitting down and having a conversation with family and friends and convincing them is very different than convincing someone who's, invested in 100 different companies, who's built $100 million company, whatever the case may be, right? So I'm, and this is really just for me, I think, I'm just curious, how was your experience or experiences been sitting down with, some big players, and trying to convey your message and your vision and your dream to them and sort of, how did those conversations go? What have you learned from them? All that stuff.
That's a great question. So early on, before we actually even did the family and friends round, we were trying to go for the big money. We're like, oh, dude, every day you're hearing someone raise this much money. You're like, oh, why can't I do it? And so it was a rude awakening. I mean, we realized that we couldn't do it. But so I was emailing. I'm not even joking when I say this. Like, I probably emailed one by one, maybe about 3,000 investors. Wow. And I would just go through, personalize them, send it. I would do that like so many times. And they get back to you. A lot of them actually do get back to you. They set up meetings and whatnot. And I can just tell you, you have to be so prepared. Yeah. Like, I was an idiot for doing that. Like, someone should have told me not to do this. But I learned. And it's something that helped me get better and better. And then I realized the things that I needed to get done in order to get to a point where I actually do get some big money. And so, with the bigger VCs and people who have larger check size capabilities, they do not really care about your underdog story. Now, they do love to have a passionate investor. They want someone that has a struggle. They think that's a good leader. They go, okay, you went through this stuff. That means you know how to manage a team. You know how to do X, Y, and Z. You know how to handle pressure well. Those are all things that are extremely important. And they see that through the story. But as soon as the story part is over, it's numbers. Okay. Who's your technical founder? Oh, I don't have one. Bye-bye. Yeah. Who's your, do you have revenue coming through the platform? Not yet. We're pre-revenue, blah, blah, blah. Some people, some investors, if there's no revenue, there's just no chance in talking to us. Some people like that. Some investors, pre-revenue, okay, there's opportunity for massive growth or an opportunity that they could come in and structure the business plan how they want to. So those are kind of key factors. But you have to just know your message very well. Because they're just 100 times more smarter than you if they're investing in these categories. If it's a music investor, if it's a coffee investor, if it's a car manufacturing investor, they know everything because they've done it. They've done it so many times. And so they're going to ask you the tough questions. And if you're not prepared for those questions, they're going to fall right through it. So the best thing you could do in those scenarios where you might have a startup, you know a lot about it, but he comes and hits you with a question that you have no idea you've ever heard about, it'd just be extremely transparent. Like, hey, I don't even know what that means. What is that terminology? They'll explain it to you. And they'll say, okay, well, do you have a plan for that? No, I don't, but thank you for bringing that up. And that doesn't look like you're unprepared. That actually puts you in a position where it's like, hey, these guys are willing to learn.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? These guys are willing to learn. Maybe we will write them a check. So there is some opportunity there to have some positive influence on them. And so when reaching out to the VCs, you just got to be really prepared. You got to know what you're asking for. You have to know exactly what your mission statement is. You got to have some type of like value added. What's the problem you're solving? And you never want to create the problem to solve it. You want to be, there's an inherent problem that's already happening that there's a 90% chance that the person you're talking to already knows about and how you solve it. And I think those are like the big things when I got like so many no's. So like it's insane. But what you do get out of it, which is really, really cool, is they say, keep us updated.
Yeah.
And then you put them in a nice email list where you currently update them. And there's investors I reached out to 3-4 years ago that they're like, yo, okay, let's jump on another call.
Came back around.
I want to see what's going on right now. And so we have some big, really, really strong roadmap right now for the next couple months to get some big money in.
And were the conversations with, let's say, these big boys, angel investors, VCs, the same conversations you were having with family and friends? Like, were you pitching it the same, or was that a little bit different?
It's mostly different, but there was a little bit overlap. Like there was a good, what's the product? Like that's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
But for them, like I mentioned earlier, the underdog story for the family and friends played a lot heavier in securing the check.
Makes sense.
But with the VC firms, again, they like it, but it's like, okay, well, at the end of the day, we need to make money back on this. So that's cool and all that, that you went through that, but how do we get our money back? So that's the bigger difference. They're just so much more money oriented. These guys are just more, and the family and friends are more dreamers and believers, and they want to give you a shot because they know who you are as a human.
One thing that I think we noticed when it came to talking to investors was they also try to look within what they currently have in their Rolodex of companies that they're invested in, and sort of like, how can what you're doing help what they currently have? That was like one of the biggest things that I think I noticed when I was talking to investors was that, right? Which I learned after the first couple conversations, before you hop into the conversation, know what they have, know what they currently have built and are working on and the things they've invested in. Because if you know that, it's easy to sort of switch up your pitch a little bit to feed into more of like what you think they're looking for, right? I say that because I think people are listening, our listeners, our audience, and anyone thinking about pitching people, that's some really good research to do. Obviously, like you said, nail down your mission statement, the problem you're fixing, your roadmaps, if you're pre-revenue, what's the plan? If you're already making revenue, what you guys are up to. Right. But then tweaking things to the individual that you're talking to. I think that's one of the biggest things that we noticed. Okay, so with that being said then, you said 250,000 family and friends, but still actively with I guess VCs, bigger investors, more mentors, things like that, trying to tap in. Is there sort of like a number, and you don't have to say it necessarily, is there a number where you want to cap it out at? Or is it kind of just open and you kind of want to keep that door revolving because you guys are growing?
Yeah, great question. So yes, there's a number that we have in mind that we want to cap it at because we know the industry that we're getting into and what we need to spend in order to make a dent in the market. But, it's always, if someone comes in, am I going to just like say, oh, we reached our goal and I'm not going to entertain this? Are they willing to take a discount? Are they willing to take less equity for it to get in? And also, once you raise that amount of money, there's like this huge like FOMO effect that happens in the VC world. Like, oh, this company invested? Like, yo,
we said no to that shit.
Damn, I should get it. And so they'll come back and they'll be willing to take like a haircut and say, listen, I'm willing to take the risk. We'll just put the money in because, as we all know, these VC firms, the way they work is they invest in like 100,000 different companies and they just want one of them.
Yeah, they need one to pop.
You know what I mean? And so that's kind of how we take it, is like, we're always open to conversations. Like I said, we know when we're not the smartest people in the room. Let's hear their feedback. And who knows, maybe it's a different partnership, or maybe one investor is looking to get out and this investor is looking to get in, and we can make a switch. And so it kind of works. And so you just got to be open to all the conversations.
And before we get into some more mindset stuff and whatnot, I think this is the perfect transition. And I kind of just want to applaud you for this.
Thank you.
Taking money from family and friends is probably one of the ballsiest things you can do.
It's tough. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we haven't done it. We know companies that have done it and failed, companies that have done it and succeeded. And we've seen both sides of what that looks like. So not to add more pressure onto you that you probably already have every single day, but I'm looking at it more of in saying like, dude, hats off to you, because I think anybody who takes risks at that level has my utmost respect. So,
thank you,
bro. That's ballsy. Fucking ballsy, and I don't root for you, so that's crazy.
I appreciate that.
As a founder too, we like to ask, business owners and founders, even just about mental health as well, right? Because it plays a huge part. You ask me and this guy, some days we're like, dude, I'm done, man. I don't want to do this anymore. But then there's some days you're just fired up, and we're blessed to have each other. We kind of bounce off each other. So talk about mental health in your journey. Yeah. There's obviously been tragedy in your life, right? But there's also been a lot of good things. How have you been able to stay on a good course of mental health, and how important is it for you?
Yeah. No, I mean, first of all, big shout out to my business partner, Justin Diamond. He plays a tremendous role in our company as well, and I get to, spitball ideas off of him, and we can figure out, if there's something that's, huge and very pressure oriented, like we figure it out together. So I'm not just taking the hit by myself. And there's a real opportunity for us to kind of just alleviate the pressure, making sure that we're all calm and we can get through it. So definitely big shout out to him and all the people around me as well. But my business partner and I always say this, it's like, we have to channel this negative energy and these, if a problem's coming to us, that means we're doing something right. You know what I mean? Like, we wouldn't be getting this problem and this stress if like we weren't onto something. So it's about putting yourself in a position where you would think, okay, how do I change this problem into a learning lesson or to benefit us, or we could pivot the company so we could do certain things. So, it's really good to have someone to work through that with, and then channeling that energy into the gym. And going out for walks. You need to learn how to relax at times. I know it's very tough. I mean, I always say this, it's like, in a weird way, I'm almost jealous of the person that's okay with a 9 to 5. It's like, oh, dude,
you say this all the time,
you're
bro.
happy and you can do this. Like, dude, that's
Yeah.
Dude, I kind of wished I was doing it. But for me, unfortunately, like, I've done the 9 to 5, and I don't feel uncomfortable. I feel like I'd rather just go open up like a corner store or something myself and not work a 9 to 5. And so, back to the mental health stuff, you just have to make sure you have a balance of some sort. It's not going to be perfect. You will be stressed. It is very difficult. Like you said, I have other people's money at stake, and it's like, do I want to ruin that relationship and whatnot? And so you are stressed, but it's like almost good. Like, it's almost good. Like, hey, I have this little fire underneath me that, gives me more motivation to get up early and make sure I'm answering that email. And if one of the devs hit me up like, hey, can you meet tomorrow for this thing? Okay, let's meet right now. Like, let me get on this call. Why do we have to wait till tomorrow? And boom, you just jump on, you get on it, and you get it done. So, I don't know, the mental health question, but I would just say you got to make sure you're hitting the gym, you're getting your exercise, you have the right people around you, and you have fun while you can, and it's cool. You meet cool people and you learn tidbits from other people as well. So,
And we, obviously this show, we talk a lot about success, right? But with success comes a lot of sacrifice, right? And I think people miss out on that point until they get there and they have to sacrifice something. Yeah. Talk about the sacrifices that you've had to make just to even get here today. I know we were talking off camera too. Your family's not in Miami. You're just in Miami.
Yeah.
There's a sacrifice right there. So talk about the sacrifices you've been making and how they've helped you get here today.
So to start that question off, like, in order to do this, you quite frankly do have to be a little bit like crazy and delusional.
Yeah.
I mean, so what you just mentioned, my family's still upstate, and it's very hard to see them from time to time. I'll go a year without even seeing my mom. And that weighs heavy on you. You know that you're kind of not in control, that to help them and make sure they're getting the quality of life that you think they want to do. But also in a weird way, you have to be a little selfish because the greater good in the long run is going to benefit everyone way better. So if you can't even support yourself, how are you going to go ahead and support someone else? So you got to take that sacrifice. You got to go do it. I quit my job. I mean, I was working full time all the way until June. I thought I could do this in tandem, but if you really, really, really want to jump into it, you have to go, you got to really figure it out. Yeah. And also investors like to see that. They want to know that you're full time.
Yeah. You
can do the job, working a job and starting a company for a while, and that's fine. And I actually encourage that for a lot of startups. That's nice income that could come in and help subsidize the investment money or help you alleviate some areas where you might have lost money in because you thought this was going to be a good deal or whatever. But it comes to a point where you're like, okay, I got to go full time. I can't, my boss is calling me here and then I have another meeting with, this celebrity and I got to pick between them. It's like, no, you got to go to the one that's going to go after your dreams. And so, those are the biggest sacrifices. I lost the security of income coming in. I was like, you know what, let me just, I don't pay myself off this $250. I'm living off my own savings that I have and really just trying to see if I could get this engine rolling and before I have to figure something else out. But the income, getting away from the family, friends. There's a lot of friends that I don't really talk to as much anymore because our pathways don't really align. And it's not, but I hate them or anything like that. It's just, hey, I have to do this. My life depends on it. I want to make this thing happen. You're comfortable and you're happy in your own way. That's amen. I'll catch you on the next event.
So see you when I see you.
You got big dreams, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing, right? So, and I think when it comes to when you lose in life, it could either break you or make you, right? And you mentioned it before. You said, okay, I either could be a victim my whole life, or I'm going to take this ship by the horns and we're going with it. Why do you think you didn't go into that victim mentality?
It's such a good question. Wow. I don't even know if I have an answer for that one. I think it's just, I just remember seeing the look on my mom's face. I mean, my mother has been through it all. And again, I don't have the best relationship with my mother either. We never really, we butt heads a lot and, she wants certain things and I don't want to do things that way and things like that. And so it just seeing this woman has just sacrificed. She lost the love of her life. She has no money. She has 3 kids. One of them is individual with cerebral palsy. She had to give up her own dreams. She had dreams of being a teacher and stuff. She could never do that, and end up working. She has 1 million followers now and all this stuff, and that's great. But it's seeing that in front of me, the guilt when it just never left me. And so, I just had it in me, something in there that was just okay, let me just start working. And I enjoyed the process of making money. I think that's really cool. I don't know if necessarily I'm a big fan of being the super millionaire, but being able to generate money and have the mentality to convince you to give me money so then I could go put it over here and do X, Y, and Z. That's a pretty cool system. I don't know, that really is awesome to me. But piling all this money up for no reason, that's not really me. I want to go experience life. I want to, be able to make a difference and stuff. So I think that's where the drive is, the system, being able to figure out the codes and the cheat codes to making a successful life. And
you mentioned something, and I'm curious about your opinion on this because we've been having this conversation. You mentioned one side of being an entrepreneur that you inherently have to be selfish. To some extent to get things done. And a lot of time that's because maybe the people around you don't understand that you're saying, hey, let me dial this in. And rather than me giving you this version of me, if I really dial in and I'm quote unquote selfish, the version of me you're going to get in 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, whatever that amount of time is going to be 1,000,000 times better. And trust me, your life's going to be better too, right? That's very hard to convince people of. So I totally agree with you from the selfish aspect and point. But the question I have for you is, do you also believe to be an entrepreneur and somebody, especially in your shoes, who is, chasing the big dogs, the big players, do you believe that there needs to be also an aspect of, having a big ego
Yeah.
to be able to do that?
So I don't know. Maybe I'm against that, the ego part. I mean, you have to have confidence. You got to go into a room with people and be able to, know your stuff, have a good conversation, talking points. When something bothers you, know how to deal with it, whether it's confronting it head on or, saying, I'm going to leave this space because I'm not happy with it. But I've always been a humble person. I've always been more on the shy side. I remember when I was like 14, I don't even think I spoke for like a year. It was like, I was just like always very quiet and I just didn't do anything. And so I've always been humble. I've never really liked people like knowing about my father's story and stuff. And that's why I'm only recently starting to do this. I never wanted anyone to feel bad for me. And so I always took a humble approach to things, kill them with kindness kind of mentality. And really sitting back and being a student of the game. These bigger companies, like you mentioned, that might have an ego to go against them. It's more like, okay, yeah, go lift that box. Let me see how you lift the box up first. Okay, the big dog just kind of messed up lifting that box. Okay, now I'll take a different angle at it. That's kind of how I see it. But I personally like the humble side of things. I don't like to go in and everyone, at the end of the day, we all bleed the same. We all breathe the same air, you know what I mean? So I like to go in and just give everyone the benefit of the doubt. And I actually was just having this conversation with a friend that ran into like kind of a sketchy situation where something happened, but I'm more of like, let's take the high ground. I learned my lesson. I just won't do that again with that person or whatever it is.
Sure.
So I don't take the ego route. I will be selfish, but I'm more in a humble way. And, I kind of just take that route a little bit.
I think it's good that you're breaking out of that shyness now and telling your story, because there's gonna be a lot of people watching this that are inspired or they relate to you in some sort of way, which leads me to say, if there is anyone out there that maybe has experienced loss or tragedy, what advice do you have for them?
So Nelson Mandela once said, there's no passion to be found playing small and settling for a life less than the one you're capable of living. So no matter the cards you're dealt in life, you still have the option of working hard. And I know it sucks. I really, really know it sucks sometimes when nothing's working your way. How am I even supposed to start? Like a lot of people are like, how do I start? Like, I don't know what I like. And they play the victim card and life wasn't fair for me and all this stuff. And so, you have resources. There are things out there. You need to figure out how to channel that. And I know for a fact, like you said, there's a lot of people that are going to watch this, and and one of the big reasons why I even came on this podcast is I hope that this message gets to them, is because I've been through it. And there's so many other people that have been through it, and there is ways. Now, do I know the specific blueprint that you could take to get there? No, unfortunately, I don't. And I don't think anyone does. I think in this life, everyone's lost. And we're all just happen to know something a little bit more than the next person. And that's what makes you an expert. You know what I mean? It's just because you have 2 more books underneath your belt that had a little bit more knowledge. So now you're the expert and I'm kind of like the student. And so the biggest thing is, whether it's a lost family member, you're dealing with some type of mental issue, drug problems, whatever it is, you were born on the wrong side of town where income is low and all this stuff, like there's something that you could do, find it, and then make sure you're happy with it, and try and figure out where you could go to get more knowledge about it. So if it's basketball, for example, and you love basketball, find the high school coach. Yo, can I get an extra, one-on-one session to get better at my layup or whatever it is? Okay, that translates into one thing. Hey, we saw that you worked really hard. We're going to start you on varsity. Things like that happen. And it's just cutting out the noise, figuring out what's going to help you, save a little bit of money, put it towards your dreams. And you're going to, like, the biggest thing, again, is you're going to fail. Like, there's no doubt in your mind, in my mind, or in anyone's mind, that they should think that they're just going to be successful the first time. Yeah. It's not going to happen. You're going to fail, and you're going to feel discouraged. And it's just about how you get through that. You know what I mean? How do you get up and just say, okay, well, I learned my lesson. Now let me try it this way. And the people who end up making it, they just keep going. They just keep running into that brick wall until they break through. So.
Yep. No victim mentality, guys.
Yeah.
You heard that.
All right, before we get into some rapid fire, we have a little segment on the show where, we ask the guests to manifest something. We want to be able to come back to this conversation in 2, 3, 4, 5 years and say, damn, it came true. So I want to ask you, is there anything you want to manifest? Maybe it's personally, maybe it's from a business perspective. The floor is yours. Manifest something for your life, for your business, whatever the case may be. Let's say into the next 5 years.
Okay. So I heavily believe in speaking things into existence as well. I hope the application that we're building out makes a extremely positive impact on the lives of indie artists, because more than anything, why I'm doing this is, and I've interviewed so many of these artists, is that they really are begging for an opportunity to have this. So I want to be able to impact those. I don't know how many of them are out there or whatever their needs.
Hit us with a number. How many? How many you want to impact?
I mean, in 5 years, I'd hope to be over 1 million users at the very least. You know what I mean? 1 million indie artists on the platform.
Yeah.
That'd be good. Seeing that the platform has generated not only millionaires off of it, but a whole bunch of 100,000aires. You know what I mean? Like,
hell yeah.
A lot of these artists that you go and listen to at the bar or whatever, they don't want to be millionaires.
Yeah.
They just want to make a good income so that they don't have to go work a 9 to 5 and they can just play their music and do it. So that's a huge success for us. If I could go back and say, 100,000 people on our platform are making 200 grand a year because of our platform. You know what I mean? That's a huge success for me. Personally, I'd love to get my family out of where we're living currently, get them down into Florida. I think it'd be better for them. Nicer weather. Up there is too cold. And build a little bit more comfort for my mother, build a little bit more comfort for my brother as well. He doesn't have an easy life either. Outside of my startup, I do like to build a nice real estate portfolio. I would love to see one of my best friends right here, Najee. Shout out to Najee.
Shout out Najee.
To be more of a full-time role in Aria as well.
Sick.
I think that'd be huge for us. And travel the world and touch hearts and kind of bring kind of a good mentality in it. But that's all I got. I mean, again, like I said, I like the humble route. I don't really
No yachts, no Ferraris. No, I'm just kidding. No, good.
If
Listen,
I'm doing it, I'm just renting it.
Yeah.
I'm not a big.
Hell yeah.
You just said that the other day too. We're just gonna rent them, no?
100%.
I don't need to buy it. I mean, if I have extreme wealth, maybe I'll think about it. But to me, I don't have it in me to want to go buy a super yacht and super cars.
Fair.
All right, we're gonna do some rapid fire.
Let's do it.
Biggest lesson you've learned from failure?
Jeez, I don't even know if I could rapid fire this. Biggest lesson is, it hurts, but it goes away fast. You get thick skin.
I like that. If you weren't building Aria, what would you be doing?
I'd be lost. I'd be so lost. I would probably be doing something. Like I said, I'd probably open my own corner store. I'd probably have something where I'm in control. I know it won't be easy, but I just can't be clocking in and clocking out.
100%.
The most surprising thing about running a startup?
The lies. There's a lot of untruthful people, unfortunately, in there. And so I think Kanye said it the best. In a world full of lies, it's hard to tell the truth, So the lies, I think that's a big thing.
What motivates you on the tough days?
Family, other people's money in my bank account.
That'll help you up.
My brother is a huge inspiration to me. With all the obstacles he went through, I don't even have a right to complain about anything. So, my brother, another big one.
What's one misconception people might have about you?
That I'm not a fierce business entrepreneur. Like, I can be very fierce. When I don't think, like, when my team's not responding in the Slack messages, I get a little like,
you're on it.
What's going on here? You guys gotta start answering me. I'm not paying for this for no reason.
If you could relive one moment in your life, what moment would that be?
it'd probably be that email day. You know, going back and knowing that was that quite literally was like, I gotta maybe give this guy equity in my company because of it, but quite literally, I was gonna give up on my dreams that day. Like I was so close to pressing that email, and that happened. So the email day, I'd probably say I would relive that because I was just jumping up and down. I was freaking out. I would start singing in the shower. I was like, let's go. You know?
What's one thing that makes a great leader?
Passion, ambition, people skills, like being able to communicate yourself. I think those are kind of more than one thing, but kind of that.
We'll take multiple. Now you got the famous question.
Of course. First of all, before we get to the question, thanks so much for coming on.
Yep.
Incredible. What a story. Dude, I think there's nothing but success for you coming. I think what you've been through and everything you've done so far and all of the pressure that you've put on yourself,
Appreciate that.
I think it can only go one way. So
It'll be worth it.
we're praying for you. Blessing, more blessings and in 2025. But of course, you are on the MBH podcast, Money Buys Happiness. So we want to ask you, Omar, do you believe money buys happiness?
So from where I am and from where I started into where I am, I want to say yes. The reason why I say yes is not in the sense of like internal happiness, but the happiness I bring around me. And, you know, I didn't make this system. You know, I mean, we live in a world where money runs everything. We're not selling chickens still and we're doing this stuff and whatnot, but in a world where the system is money motivated, money does buy happiness in the sense of it can make a difference and add comfort to someone's life. Now, you do have to find happiness internally in yourself and maybe in other people, but you just can't really live a life that's comfortable without it. So
Yeah.
I'd say that.
I like that. You know what? We've heard similar, but I like what you said. It's like, we didn't make the system.
Yeah, it's not our choice.
So people are like, oh, it's like, well, bro, I didn't decide this.
Yeah.
Like you said, we're not selling chickens. We're not bartering chickens for MacBooks. You know what I mean? But once again, thank you so much for coming on,
Appreciate
man. It's been an
you, man.
absolute
Appreciate it.
pleasure.
Thank you.
And with
Thank
that being said, guys, like, subscribe. You know what to do. We're out.